hour later, the meeting was over and Fu Nancheng and Mr. Smith walked out, just passing by the president's office. Mr. Fu, is that the person who got into trouble and you need to take care of it yourself? Yes. Fu Nancheng raised his eyebrows, but did not deny it. Mr. Smith saw Zhuxi at a glance. At this time, Zhuxi was sitting on the sofa and reading a book. Her intact left profile was pure and moving. Mr. Smith glanced at Zhuxi again and said, "She is really beautiful." Fu Nancheng stepped forward and blocked Mr. Smith's gaze. "Mr. Smith, the hotel is ready. I'll have someone take you there first." "Okay." Unable to bear to look at it any longer, Mr. Smith smiled and left. "Can't even look at her for one more time. Mr. Fu has become stingy." Secretary Song stepped forward and said, "President, I heard that Miss Su really entered CC today." Fu Nancheng looked at the girl. She was reading a book seriously. She was calm and composed, neither arrogant nor impatient. How do you think she, a student with no background, could get that job? In fact, he was not that surprised. She said last night that she would go into CC by herself, and she did go in, but how did she, a clown girl from the countryside, get in? I heard that it was King who arranged for Miss Su to go. King is Su Qianru. Considering their relationship, this is reasonable. Oh, you think so? Fu Nancheng spread his long legs and walked into the office. Hearing footsteps, Zhuxi looked up from her. "Mr. Fu, you're back. I was bored just now, so I took a book from your bookshelf to read. I'm putting it back for you now." Zhuxi put the book back. "If you like it, this book is for you." Zhuxi looked back at him, her eyes curled up. "I dare not take Mr. Fu's book. If your personal female secretary knew, she would probably be the first to rush up and tear me up." "My personal female secretary? You mean Wang Mani?" Mr. Fu remembers this female secretary very well. Yes, the female secretary would hold your suit as a token of authority, and it was obvious that she didn't consider herself an outsider. She spoke to him in a soft and sarcastic voice. Fu Nancheng raised his heroic eyebrows and looked her up and down with a frivolous look. Jealous? As he spoke, he moved closer to her. Zhuxi didn't like him getting too close. His aura was too strong and too alluring, and it was easy for people to fall in love with him, so she stepped back and said, "You are overthinking. I'm here to talk about Madame Fu. It's not a good idea to go on like this. Find a chance to tell her about the substitute." Fu Nancheng then stopped in front of her. He looked at her with his handsome eyelids lowered and whispered, "My mother is in poor health. I have been taking her abroad for treatment over the years. She has a mental illness and her emotions cannot be stimulated." At this time, Fu Nancheng reached out and pinched her small chin, forcing her to look up at him. "My mother likes you so much. Do you think she can bear it if I tell her the truth?" Zhuxi bit her red lips lightly with her pearly teeth and said with embarrassment, "You can't keep lying to her like this." Zhuxi curled up her slender fingers. In fact, she already knew. Fu Nancheng is really filial and always listens to his mother's words. "Zhuxi, follow me for half a year." "What?" These words exploded in Zhuxi's ears, and she suddenly looked up at him. Her skin was as white as a newborn baby's, and the layer of fine hair on it was crystal clear, crisp and fragile, making her look clean and young. Fu Nancheng looked at her red lips that had just been bitten. "Didn't you understand? I want you to stay with me for half a year and continue to play the role of my Mrs. Fu. In half a year, I will slowly deal with my mother." Is he letting her continue to be a substitute? "I don't want it!" She refused on the spot. Fu Nancheng pinched her jaw with his fingers. "What did I say? You are such an ungrateful little wolf that you can never tame. Today I gave you a sports car worth 12 million for nothing. My mother loves you in vain." These are two different things. "Zhuxi, aren't you afraid that something will happen to my mom? You were the one who provoked me and my mom first. Don't forget that you were the one who started it." Zhuxi felt that she was also a victim, but she couldn't explain herself. Madame Fu was too good to her. If anything happened to Madame Fu because of her, she would never feel at peace for the rest of her life. But she really didn't want to be a stand-in anymore, as it was clearly agreed that the stand-in period would end. Zhuxi looked at him. "Be a substitute for half a year. What do you mean by a substitute? Are we going to be together?" The current situation is that Su Shui, the middleman, is gone, and she has become his substitute. Fu Nancheng stared at her deeply and passionately. "What do you think?" "That's right. What exactly was I thinking?" "We're all done. What else does he want to do?" Zhuxi pushed him away and was about to leave, but Fu Nancheng reached out to hold her and put his arms around her soft waist, hugged her gently, and sat her on his lap. Zhuxi was startled by the coldness under her buttocks. This was his office. She struggled immediately. "Let me go. I don't want to sit here." Fu Nancheng looked at her youthful appearance and held her in a domineering manner. "Zhuxi, are you unhappy being with me? In addition to status and children, I will give you everything you want." Zhuxi never thought about asking for his status and children, because she also had no way to give him a status and children. "Fu Nancheng, I now suspect that you used Mrs. Fu's name for me to live with you." Fu Nancheng looked at her youthful appearance and held her in a domineering. "Can't you?" "Zhuxi, I can give you whatever you want." He just said. Fu Nancheng was so angry that he wanted to cover her mouth. He lowered his head and kissed her rosy lips. "No matter who you care about, I must have you." His handsome face was so close before her eyes that Zhuxi felt a little weak, but she raised her 2 small hands and pushed him away. "Zhuxi, I heard that King arranged you to work in CC. Do you know King? Who is King?" Zhuxi knew that he had been looking for King, so she would not reveal her identity. "I don't know King, only an acquaintance of mine knows King." Fu Nancheng looked at her suspiciously. "Really?" "Yes." Zhuxi pushed him away and jumped down. "Mr. Fu, I have something else to do, so I'll leave first." "Well, you think about it carefully. I'll wait for your answer." Zhuxi left and Secretary Song came in. "President," Fu Nancheng said in a deep voice, "have someone investigate Zhuxi. I want all her information from childhood to adulthood." "Yes, President." "Also, Wang Mani came into my office just now?" Secretary Song was stunned. "It seems so. She came to deliver the clothes. Tell her she doesn't need to come tomorrow." Did Wang Mani offend Miss Zhuxi? Did the president start taking action against his female secretary for Miss Zhu's sake? Secretary Song was already trembling with fear. He felt that he must serve Miss Zhu carefully in the future, otherwise his job would be in jeopardy. "Banquet hall of Fu's old house. Qianru, are you planning to give it to Madame Fu later?" "Yes, I heard that Mrs. Fu has trouble sleeping. I made this calming sachet myself. I hope it can help her." "Don't worry, Qianru. Mrs. Fu is famous for being easy to talk to, and she will definitely like your intention." Of course, I specially copied it 1-to-1 from the director's King formula. It is a rare and valuable item. Mrs. Song likes Su Qianru very much. Su Qianru is not only her idol, but also the one who cured her face. She loves Su Qianru with all her heart. "Qianru, I'm going to answer a call." "Okay." "It seems like today is a ladies' party, and I'm the only young man here, so it's an opportunity." Su Qianru deliberately wore a pink dress and put on light makeup. She looked beautiful, generous and gentle, the kind of good daughter-in-law that even mothers-in-law like. Su Qianru smiled like a flower, and then she saw Zhuxi coming. Why is she here? Was it the old woman who brought her here yesterday? Su Qianru immediately thought of the damn old woman who gave Zhuxi a sports car worth 12 million yesterday. No one knew who that damn old woman was, but she dared to protect Zhuxi and go against her. Su Qianru perfectly hid the coldness in her eyes and showed a sweet and harmless smile. "Zhuxi, how did you get in? I tell you, the world is not full of noble people like Mrs. Song. There are also many scammers. Don't be fooled." Zhuxi looked at Su Qianru calmly. "Why should I be afraid of a liar? Isn't the biggest liar right in front of me?" Su Qianru didn't expect this clown Zhuxi to come. It seemed like she was going to ruin her good deed again. She immediately scolded with a cold face. "I'm doing this for your own good, but you want me to say it out loud? This is not the place for you. I'm here to see Madame Fu. What are you doing here?" Zhuxi stood under the retro palace lanterns in the corridor, looking at them with a pair of bright eyes and a smile, pretending to be surprised. "What a coincidence. I am also here to see Mrs. Fu." "Haha, you really can joke." At this time, the maid at the door said, "Mrs. Fu is here." At this time, Mrs. Fu's voice sounded, "What's going on? Why haven't the guests come in yet?" This voice. Why does it sound so familiar? Su Qianru looked up and saw Madame Fu coming out. She was petrified instantly. How could it be this old woman? "Mrs. Fu is her?" Su Qianru opened her mouth in disbelief. This old woman was actually Mrs. Fu? How is that possible? Impossible. Absolutely not. Preview next chapter. At this moment, there was a bang, and the door of the luxury box was kicked open. Zhuxi looked up and saw the tall and handsome figure of the man standing by the door. "Why are you here?" The deafening sound frightened several people. Someone quickly recognized Fu Nancheng. Fu Nancheng sat down in the main seat, his handsome back lazily leaning against the chair. He raised his handsome eyelids and looked at the drunken boss opposite him. "It's very lively here. What are you doing?"